This morning, inspirative speeches, we go in depth within the conference. This afternoon, we will have the pleasure of listening to keynote speeches about the main topic of the conference, about the data science, about the analytics. With a pleasure, first I would like to announce the first keynote speaker at this conference, Dr. Kunio Mikuria, to address you on the topic of data science and then how this could be introduced within the customs. Also, I would like to announce that there is a live streaming on YouTube so that your presence, the speech of keynote speakers will be shared around the world and then viewed by much more participants all around the world, which I send the greetings from Skopje, North Macedonia. So, Dr. Mikuria, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You see at the opening ceremony, His Excellency Prime Minister has come and he showed very enthusiasm to support customs in the era of digital economy. And the digitization is very important. And this year the theme, smart borders, which is also about how to use that big data or artificial intelligence, machine learning, all those new technologies for the customs. Well, now we are living in the era of digital technology and combined with mobile technology. So if you have a mobile phone like this, and then you can consult how to come to this conference, which is the best way. And on the map, then the way is clearly shown. Or around here, what kind of restaurant? Then one click, you can search for that. So that in this way, the use of big data and has become really a landscape of everyday life. And also, not just, it is two ways, not only we are asking for that information, but targeted advertisement will come. So someone behind the scene knows that I'm going to Skopje and what kind of tourism is there, etc., coming online or in my email box. Well, so this is the reality of life. And in this context, customs is really well placed to become a prime domain for the use of big data. Well, it's worth remembering that especially in the government sector, customs has been a pioneer of using information technology. And even the first use would be in the 1970s. Several countries, usually developed ones, started to adopt information technology. But developing countries are not lagging behind so much. Since the 1980s, they also started to look at the use of information technology. And nowadays, if I look at my 183 members, most of them have adopted the information technology for computer, and of course, depending on the priority of each customs, the technical specification is different. But more or less, custom procedures are automated. And together with this information technology, of course, customs have the culture of using a computer. And the most obvious one is, of course, concept of risk analysis. And we get the data, commercial data, and analyze that data, whether those cargoes associated with that information are safe, and can we release that kind of practice is based on econometric algorithms. So we are not, we are already familiar with this use of data. And but in customer context, what I see was risk analysis, risk management, or revenue. For example, getting external data from outside to compare your export country's data and import country's data, mirror analysis, to see what kind of potential revenue leakages there is quite often used. Or performance measurement, what kind of performance each customer officer is doing, and that will give a Director General to see what his or her staff individually is doing, and in that way to rectify any bad practice and to make sure that the customs functions well. And in those areas, we are not using very complex algorithms, and the software is rather simple. Whereas nowadays, the era of big data, so more availability of data, and of course, researchers quickly make the link between customs and use of artificial intelligence. And I see the beginning of that use. For example, in the area of safety or health protection, I see that e-commerce actors, they are the user of artificial intelligence. Before putting any advertisement or, say, pharmaceutical goods, often they use artificial intelligence by image recognition, and if there is any risk of counterfeiting. So already that technology, it could be used in customs. And more recently, I see the use of geodata or satellite data for security purpose. And in this way, at the border area, we customs used to focus on specific border cross points. But using satellite data, we can have risk management of the entire border, land borders. And so this kind of use of open data, it has become really increasingly common. And we use those open data together with more traditional source of intelligence or trade. That is what many customers are trying to start. And this is, well, in a way, virtual circle. Because digitization of services generate more data, and which in turn generate more information, more knowledge. So that cycle will further accelerate the use of big data. So whether you like it or not, data surrounds us. And so what are the concerns for customs? And even before customs, in general in the society, there is a concern that, well, artificial intelligence might bypass or even surpass humans. And that might result in, well, loss of jobs and further inequality. That kind of concern is there. And one mathematician said that this could be a weapon of math destruction. It's not a mathematics destruction, because in that way, the mathematics used for data science could result in increasing social inequalities and contributing to the destruction of society. And also, artificial intelligence could dictate our behavior. I already talked about how to use mobile phones, but quite often it is a mathematical evidence that dictates us what to do. And So what we are seeing is that it's not only practice, but governance, how the society is governed. And it could result in two groups of people. One is using mathematics, the software algorithm, to govern the society, and another who are governed by mathematics. So those are the concerns, and with this concern in mind, one part of us have extreme optimism, or that will really beneficial to all society. Others are really, well, concerned what would be the problems that artificial intelligence can bring. So I will talk in this speech in the first section discussing about main challenges that customers has experienced and will experience. And in the second part, how big data revolution will profoundly change our thinking and also affect governance of societies. And of course, for that, customers should keep pace with this changing thinking, changing big data, data science in general. Well, although many data science applications already exist for customs, and they are usually very pragmatic, experimental, and motivational. And, but overall, what we observe is that we need to promote more of the use of customs data, particularly at a global level. And now use of data, it says, well, big data and, well, AI or machine learning. Well, don't go into the too much of definition, but you can think that this is data science. And faced with excitement, because there is a huge excitement in the use of AI data science. But there is a cautious voice. Is it a hype? Because in the past, when the notion of artificial intelligence was first arrived in 1950s, and when I talk to AI experts, they often point out that already there were 2 winters, or, well, the expectation goes up on the mountain and all of a sudden fall in 1970s and 80s. So there have been already 2 winters in artificial intelligence compared to the expectation. And now we have to, ask ourselves, is it at the beginning of the 3rd winter, a bit of disappointment, or can we really ride on this data science? Of course, those data scientists tell me that yes, the latter case is correct. So we'll see whether that will be the case. But for that, customers should be well prepared. And there are several types of obstacles, especially in the realm of customs, to really apply this new data science. So I'll mention about a few of those obstacles. First one is about technical one, and another is more cultural one. For technical problems, first, we humans want to understand what AI or what the software is doing. And this is called comprehensibility of algorithm. That is to say that we understand how the algorithm reaches one decision. And depending on that, we would like to choose algorithm. And we don't want to use algorithm usually without understanding, and we want to understand in our own way why that solution comes. And so this is this could be a kind of problem because to be more precise, their high comprehensibility is what has led, for example, in the customs world, decision tree algorithm. We constantly do our risk assessment, and what we do is that we identify several areas, field contained, for example, in the customs declaration, and we do set of choices. For example, customs declaration contain goods. Where is the origin? What type of goods? And what the type of transport is used, and who are involved. So that kind of data, several data is there, and from that data, we arrive at identifying a risk of fraud, and this is really a tree or branches that, okay, this is from this country, and yes or no, and then this is the, type of goods, yes or no, very prone to fraud, etc. So that kind of branch is going whether that typical goods meet a criterion that we set at the beginning. And at the end of the branches, the software gives you, that algorithm gives you, that this has a huge potential of high risk. And that will, of course, based on that, quite often we decide our way of intervention, whether to inspect or, okay, let's go, etc. And this is a very understandable way, and understanding the full capability of machines is feasible. But nowadays, the data science is moving towards that beyond our understanding, full understanding, and we have to abandon that understanding, and can we have a reliable one? That is what we have to think about. And I will come back in the second section. But so this is the global or general concern. But more specifically in customs, there are several technical pitfalls. The first pitfall is bias. And if data are poorly collected or incomplete, and biases specific to this would result, would be reproduced and amplified by the algorithm. And customer fraud will never be detected if we rely on badly collected or incomplete data to do so. Well, some will say that, human is, after all, this is a human problem, because human who collect data and carriers, they have bias. But perhaps the problem is more than that, because humans' margin of these biases will affect greatly what our decision would be. And so this is the bias, and this is why customers keep on saying that quality data, please. The second problem is it is inherent to algorithm, but inability of the machine to evaluate its errors. Because they can, well, evaluate their error, margin of error by quantification. So quantitatively, this is the margin of error that, machine will advise us. But machine doesn't consider the gravity of the consequence. And take an example. If there are two softwares, and but those two softwares will be prone to false negatives. False negatives meaning that fraudulent declarations that are not selected by the algorithm that we call false negatives. And the first software is prone to have that false negatives, especially in illegal import of weapons. Generally, it's good, but that is a problem. And the second algorithm software will be less functioning than the first one, but their false negative is more diverse. So in that case, which software are we going to adopt? Maybe or probably the second one, because we want to have less consequential software. And artificial intelligence quantitatively evaluates its error, which is its main rationales, which guide the choice of algorithm, but it cannot interpret the consequence of its errors. So this is the second inherent technical problem. The third problem, especially to customs, is how to convince customs officer to use software algorithm. Because customs officers want to do more, to find more frauds rather than almost as much fraud. I just give you some explanation because machine can be very useful to the extent that we teach machine. Because, for example, we get processed declarations, we divide into two, and one part is, we know that they are false. Another part is, not false. Or no fraudulent. And with that fraudulent sample of declarations, we teach machine to identify what are the fraudulent declarations. So machine is very much now good in selecting fraudulent declarations based on what the machine learned. And but the good part of machine is that they can do that very quickly. So usually research papers will come up that algorithm or use of computer can detect a high percentage of fraud by sending less container or cargo to channel of inspection, so controlling fewer. So that is what we often see in the research paper. But of course, human customs officers, from their point of view, because of that limitation, computer cannot detect 100% of fraudulent transactions because they were not trained. And customs officers usually want to do more, to find more. And this computerized procedures almost as much fraudulent declaration could be detected with control less, which is a very good thing from the trade facilitation point of view doctrine, that reduction of control. But usually customs officers are not necessarily satisfied with that. And this is what we often call natural talent, or instinctive or intuitive aptitude, imagination, or simple luck, that they try to find more. And that is what we try to include the element of chances. And so that will result, that will be supported by changing the acceptability of control versus a very scientific calculated criterion that algorithm presents. So, so this is what we do. And especially when I was still at customs, I kept on saying that, okay, your computer system, risk criteria will give you the indication. But you have to do more by using your brain or intuition. So this is what we are doing. And with that, can we convince customers to use more that algorithm? So, in the technical area, we have the problem of amplification of biases, qualitative evaluation of its errors, and a method of teaching algorithm which will result in limitation. So those are the current technical pitfalls. But I think solutions will come from scientists, and because they are technical issues. But we customers have to popularize and internalize these problems. Then I'm going quickly to cultural aspect, because the second category of obstacles that we encountered is more of cultural or our institution. The first prejudice often we encounter is that, data science is only for a few wealthy countries. And this is what WCO has studied, and quite often in the developed economy, they have already invested hugely in the IT system. And those hardware and software are not necessarily open or compatible with the current data science. And they function well, and they are very secure and complete. And they clear goods very quickly. Why those functioning IT system? We need to open up to open source software. So this is the problem of a legacy system, whereas developing countries, they can leapfrog. And by including open source technology into their new systems, so they can be more agile. And moreover, what I would like to say is that we are all rich in data. Data is often called the new oil. Yes, as economic potential, it could be new oil. But oil is often lopsided in the area that we can find, whereas we are all rich in data. So it's not a scarce resource. We can use that more. And also, not only data, but software. Quite often, software for data analytics is open and free of charge in downloading. So this is really something that we have to think of. Rather than investing in expensive software licenses, why don't you train and educate customs officers, and they can do their own? And so this is the first point. And the second point is about recruiting data scientists. When I talk to use of data science, quite often heads of customs response that, but we have difficulties in recruiting those data scientists. And perhaps there are some clues. Firstly, if we provide adequate working environment with recent graduate, they are willing to do their data science in customs, because what they really cherish is access to a wealth of data. If you are in the public sector, you have huge data available, whereas if you are in the private sector, not so much. And also, some of them might be more motivated in addressing the social related to protection of society rather than marketing issues. So this is one area. And when I visit several administrations, they say that, yes, providing more data, then they will be happy. And quite often, data science don't want to be Director General of Customs, but they want to get fame and promotion in their own community of data science. So this might be one area of solution. Another solution might be that, customs officers, especially young ones, are so diversified, and from the younger age, they are very much familiar with computer or game, and you might have experience that when you have the new software, it's better to ask your children how to do that. They are not necessarily good in explaining you, but they know how to do that. So why not having those young customs officers who might be interested in this area, train them, and they will be very happy to get that kind of training. And of course, another solution would be to have a partnership with universities and research institutes, and of course, this PICARD conference is relevant to this one. And those universities could train customs officers and to make them work with those academics. And so this is what we can look at to address this problem of recruitment. Well, cultural challenge is, the notion of just a wealthy country's gadget or recruitment. Another one is that quite often customers are tempted to outsource the use of big data, but which is not a correct way. In the past, 20, 30 years ago, customers often outsourced the use of information technology. But this data science is different from IT function because we have to deal with the data. And to deal with the data, you need really domain knowledge. And if you see the data scientist, most of the time they spend just shaping or polishing data. I have been going to technology conference organized by WCO and ask them, what are you doing? And what they are doing is spending time in just polishing up, cleaning the data so that that can give you back a meaningful outcome. And that is not a wasted time because you are in that data. And how to get quality data, to make data quality so that you can obtain a meaningful outcome is very important. So quite often in the data science, 80% of time, energy spent on polishing up data, but without domain knowledge of data, it is very difficult to do that. So this is why this is the area different from IT, but customs domain knowledge is very important. Well, science and governance is also go hand in hand. So I'm talking about more on governance issue because and also science issue. First, science is very important in our governance. Whether you think of Max Weber's modern states, or more recently, Soviet administration of Gosplan, or new public management, and currently there are the economists dominate our policy choice, policy making, and they are of course based on science. But that science seems to be making a paradigm shift because we are seeing that science hitherto really based on causal relationships. What is the cause and effect? That is, of course, the science. This is really changing very quickly. So this is what we need to look at. And for example, in the customs area, we do that using our logics of how to get that good outcome of risk management. But increasingly, I see emergence of other way, deep learning, neutral networks, and well, it goes without it goes coming that outcome without us even understanding how those machines come to that conclusion. Well, think of a machine beating champions of chess or Go, but it is often difficult to explain how that machine comes up with that next move to beat those champions. So this kind of change is there. And those machines, newer machines, act differently from what we used to. They look at relations of similarity or resemblance between situation and phenomenon. And they reduce that complex world into probability. And whereas humans are more accustomed to simplifying thinking and simply imaginable elements could be connected. That is how we think. But those deep learning or neural network machines come up with a solution which is not necessarily verifiable. So this is what we constantly experience. Look at science fiction movie. Quite often, your computer, in a critical situation, says that if you go this 80%, you have this risk. 30% this risk, which you choose, and okay, click this way. That kind of science fiction movie is quite rampant, but increasingly it is, we see that kind of change. And of course, that change is coming to us. Well, just one example, not necessarily linked to that, IT, but we are looking at more on rise of rankings. And rise of rankings has governance, affect governance of international trade. Well, many of you know the World Bank's ease of doing business ranking. And customers usually don't like it because whenever they have a bad ranking, customers are whipping boys. And so we tend to say that, this is subjective by nature, that ranking. But not so fast. There is nothing intrinsically political or subjective in calculating. What is different, what subjectivity might come is that the choice of data. So this is what we need to know, that if the data is incomplete, for example, custom data is not taken into account, we'll have a problem. And so all people are now looking at availability of data, and this is a good, cautious tale that if we want to influence the governance of society, we must produce data to do so. So this is what we look increasingly in this area. I'm talking, not only limited to customs, but in other areas as well. And as science is moving towards from causality to probability, in some areas at least, so we have to adjust ourselves And in that case, we have to think about education training as well. In the past, we used to send brilliant students to law faculty because law and rules of law is so important. And of course, it still stands. But do we have to think about training civil servants more with data? That is another thinking that this big data gives us as a revolution for science and then governance. So this is a radical change that we are actually observing. And so this has a really fundamental implication for us. And we should ourselves look at data. If you do not produce data about yourself, others will do it for you. And the chances are high that you'll find the data to be incomplete, but it will be too late. And so this is why in the WCO, we are trying to look at the data and even to counter the doing business, to complement doing business customs data set. We are now reviewing time release study. Well, when it comes to that, perhaps the final change that we have to think of is data protection or secrecy, because that will change what our obligation and the way of operations. Protecting public IT networks against data leakage, of course, it is very important. And especially those who are dealing with data on individuals, it is a really important area. In this connection, Customs has a long history of protecting data for commercial and personal interest. And we have the technique of data anonymization. So this is what we try. But a recent noticeable change is that the stake is very high for privacy of individuals, industrial and commercial secrets. And they became natural resources for the society. But currently, from the governance point of view, it is usually government, states exploit the data as a new resource. But we can envisage new demand coming from the private sector that, data, it shouldn't be monopoly of states, but also it should be open to the private sector. And it's not only data, but data algorithm as well, software. And I noticed that increasingly there are public institutions that make available not only data, but also some algorithm into public domain. For example, passenger control, passenger screening, some administrations make it free to be able to check if this is okay or not. And security and military agencies even started organizing hackathon. Hackathon is hacking plus marathon. Hacking is not the security breach of IT system, but rather exploring programmings and marathon. So inviting external stakeholders, and this is the problem, data and software, how you can improve that or coming up a solution. That kind of undertaking is there, even in the military area such as NATO. And some customs and tax administration started to that kind of context, provide data, objective, for instance, risk analysis, and the price, and the data scientists will all over the world come to elaborate the best algorithm. So this is a cheap way of mobilizing external talent for that purpose. And also it would even open government could be achieved. So the big data will undoubtedly upset or disrupt our relationship with that secrecy or protection of data. A monopoly of the production of knowledge is not feasible. Citizens more joining, and they will request more and more data because it is a mirror image. States ask more data from citizens. In that case, citizens also want to see what kind of data they are dealing with, what kind of data algorithm they are using. So this is the new society that we are living. Well, now I would like to refer to WCO, what we are doing. And when WCO first introduced this data science in 2015 PICARD conference, it didn't get much of attention from the audience, but nowadays it has changed. It is the mainstream. And WCO has launched a cloud computing platform so that we can open up to customers, data scientists, and explore the possibility offered by the data. And we also organize high-level regional seminars so that customer manager understand how to use big data. And one area is that we launched a band of customers data analysts, and so we open up those who know how to use data, especially young customer officers, join with data and know-how, and we share that. So in that way, we directly address that inclusion of data science into customs. So as to conclusion, we remain radically optimistic. So radical optimism is necessary because this will distinguish us from the machines. And because using data, that will give us more idea. And it could be end of authoritative ideas, but more democratic data. And we all produce data almost in spite of ourselves, but we do not all use data in such a way to produce ideas. So I think this is the time that governance by data has become so common, and we should see that it will give us an opportunity to consider and use all the data, therefore the data of all, by all, and for all. Thank you very much for your attention.
So thank you, Secretary General. It was very inspiring keynote speech. I will not wrap up at this moment, but there was a very positive thoughts and ideas like radical optimism, like hackathon and other things that we really will have the pleasure to elaborate and discuss among customs officials, academia, and the private sector. The next keynote speaker at this conference, with a great pleasure, I pronounce Dr. Ming Cha from the Korea Institute of Advanced Science. She is a very well-known scientist and researcher in Korea. For a scientist, it's a very well appreciation. Her the data analysis research were quoted more than 12 times in another research, which it's one of the biggest awards, and then she was rewarded award for the best research paper. The pleasure is ours, the pleasure is mine, so to hear her view and understanding of data science and data analytics within the customs. So the floor is yours, please.
Okay. Hi, thank you so much for inviting me to this conference. I'm one of the first members to join the PACUDA initiative. PACUDA means to change in Korean. So today I want to give you a glimpse of what data science can do. And I am here to learn from all of you. Please come to me during the breaks and tell me about your daily tasks. What's your the most important problems that you wish it could be done better with the use of data. Right, so let me start by first emphasizing all of this became possible because all the data that have been are logged, and then we have really advanced tools, machine learning, deep learning, image detection, that we can make use of. So this is a picture showing the map of United States, and then it's showing some parts of the city when the city has enough people who have adopted certain technology. And this is an example of what data science can tell us. Before this kind of study, we often thought the biggest city, the largest city, would be the first cities to adopt new technology. But if you take a look carefully, the first cities to adopt a technology are from California and the Boston area, which are tech-savvy places. But the next set of cities that adopt are not necessarily the largest cities, but these are the nearby cities of these tech-savvy regions. So which says that even when we have the internet and access to technology, having somebody, a friend or neighbor who has adopted your exposure is more important than simply living in the largest city. So this is a great example. And another example shown here is it's showing how people jog in the Manhattan, New York area on a regular day and in a rainy day. So these researchers, this paper published at Nature, which is one of the most prestigious journals that we have, shows that they wanted to look at how can we spread healthy behaviors like exercising, which is really hard to spread. So when we have a social network, when we know that you have a friend who is running actively, and then you have a friend who runs maybe once a week or once or twice every 2 weeks, what is your chance of running? Oh, this one. I'm sorry. Okay. So what is your chance of, I'm short, so I don't want to be hiding behind this podium. Okay, so what is your chance of running in the future? So let's say you have somebody who's like an avid runner, runs every single day, and then you have another friend who is running, but maybe once a week. What is your chance of running the following year? The answer is having a person of B type. Because if you have a runner friend who's running too much, you will never be able to catch up with the friend. But having someone who's running occasionally, it's a lower barrier, and then you're more likely to run. So all of these studies, it's interesting to look at a map like this. But the implication is, how can we make people engage in more healthy behaviors, exercises, which would reduce a lot of tax involved in various healthcare problems? So data science, the focus is at making policy implications. But if we don't know, if we don't interact with someone who has policy who can make these decisions, we would not be able to reach novel results. So I'm really interested in talking to you and hearing about the details of the problems, although it's going to take some time, for computer scientists to understand, like, what are the logistics. Okay, let me just get this. Okay, so there have been also huge emphasis about looking at the network of people connections. Network can be drawn from many things based on how frequently two people interact with one another over Twitter, Facebook. There's Facebook graph that you can download. and also just based on how similar people are in their interest. So we can do natural language processing, and then we can associate people who are talking about similar terms. And there has been tons of analysis, predictive analysis, that show that if you have a graph of network and its temporal evolution over time, you can predict a lot of things. You can predict when this person will adopt certain ideas, when this person will break up with one of his friends or his significant other, based on the way that these networks are changing. So these kind of ideas, there have been tons of papers published in the domain, can be easily adopted to look at the network of importers, exporters, and how similar their data are. And obviously, data is the new oil. Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit further and just give you a glimpse of what technology can do at the moment. So there have been a question of whether AI can produce art. And a few years ago, we would say, no, AI can only do simple tasks that they're asked to do. But now the answer is no. A drawing picture produced by AI had been sold at $8,000. This was a couple of years ago. How hard I might try, my paintings will not be sold at this price. So obviously, some AI can produce more artistic outcomes than an average human can do. And a couple of years back, a novel written by a Japanese AI program has passed the first round of screening for the National Literary Prize. The reviewers had no idea this was written completely by AI, and interestingly, the novel is called The Day a Computer Writes a Novel. So this is really, these outcomes are super interesting. So there are super advanced AI technologies being invented at each field, and we know that by 2040, 95% of the cars in the street will be fully autonomous. Fully autonomous meaning that the act of human touching, trying to interact with the car will increase the accidents because it has to be fully autonomous. So that's where the AI is going, and customs administration could definitely make use of some of the most highly advanced technologies that we have. Okay. So I'm going to just quickly go over the kinds of the research that we do. Our lab is data science lab, and our goal is to develop computational analytical method to support interdisciplinary problems. And our problems are social science problems. We work with companies like Facebook, but we also work with NGOs like UN, and we also started working with the WCO. Okay, so here is one example of what I mean by some of the social impact projects. So Indonesia has thousands of islands, and it's really challenging to gather food prices. People cannot purchase food in advance because they have to meet their daily means. And people want to know what's going to be the food price tomorrow, not long in the future, but maybe like a couple of days in the future, or what's going to be the food price for exactly like for their chili, chicken, every daily products. So the collection takes about a week to be gathered at the central office, and then it's released. But this is too late. So we look at Twitter and internet data because people post a lot of information that the price is going up or down, and then we have a prediction model that could cast the prices of the crucial food in real time. And then we ship the code together with UN. We have a project page where people can actually log in and track their food prices. So this is one example of a collaboration. And then there's huge advances done in the natural language processing. So a lot of the internet or the web data are very messy because they have broken language, they don't grammatically wrong slangs, all sorts of things. And the new forms are even visual. You could see an example of a hate speech here. combination of a letter and some images. Humans can obviously read this, but how do we teach machines to read them? So the latest advances can even handle a mix of these pictures. So we are tackling, our lab as well as many other research labs in NLP are tackling these complex language understanding with the use of AI. Right, so this is going to be one project that you might link to your daily task to. So one of the projects that we launched this year is looking at economy of developing countries from high-definition satellite images. We call it the Project Black Box. So we were motivated by this picture, which you must have seen on the news some time back. When we look at the nighttime satellite images, the nighttime light intensity often reflects how wealthy the city or the region is. So it's a good indicator of economic scales. But if you look at North Korea, it's all black, except for Pyongyang area. We already know the detailed statistics of all the developed regions, like South Korea. We know how wealthy each city is. We know how wealthy each city is in Germany and all the places where there are enough lights. But for underdeveloped, developing regions, there are not enough light. So that these are the regions where we need to know the indicators, but the data are often missing. And now we came to an area where really high definition images like these, this is a train station in one of the train station area in North Korea. And this image is now available for free on the internet. The data had been there, but before it was not released, it was under some institution. But now there are lots of data that are being freely available for researchers, so we can now start to utilize them. So these are the same regions. Once they built a train station, you could see how much transformation the area is undergoing. You can see different structures of the buildings and so on. A human eye can easily detect that. Can we teach machines to detect these changes so that we can tell, the machines can instead tell us, this region likely contains how many people, it's going through very rapid construction or very slow construction. So we want to teach the machines what what our human eyes are capable of, and we want to do that for very underdeveloped regions, including North Korea. Yeah. So there have been some paper published on Science looking at African regions, and our approach is similar, but we use more advanced techniques. So we are using satellite images where 1 pixel is 10 meter by 10 meter, or sometimes 50 centimeter. So with the 50 centimeter, you can't recognize faces, but you can recognize at least buildings. So example of a 50 centimeter resolution is like that. And our technique can gather large amount of data that are publicly available for free from the internet. And then combining these data set, we have a prediction model of how many college degree students are living in this area, how much public spending this area will likely have, and how many total population density can we expect from this area. So we start estimating a lot of things by correlating image features with what we already know about those regions from survey or from official reports. So I could imagine if you want to monitor borders of different places for the customs administration, you can apply some similar techniques. So we have a model which is working pretty well. We can just put lots of pictures, and it's going to sort the pictures from the very rural to the most urbanized places. And our next step is even tracking the shape of the buildings. By tracking the shape of the buildings, and then we can compare multiple images over time, and we can also see whether the roof color of the building has been changed, meaning that in some poor rural areas, when people have enough money, they will change their building, the roof and so on. So we can start tracking some changes over time. So these are the things that we can do when we combine AI with social science problems. I didn't know about this problem before, but I started working on this problem starting this March because 3 economists came to visit my lab and they proposed this problem. What are the techniques to infer economic status of very poor regions? Before they came, I had no idea there was such a problem. And then we started looking for what kind of data we can use, what kind of implication this has, and then soon I could recognize this is a very important problem where computer science can come in and help solve it together. Right. So I think there are going to be a lot of things. I am still at the phase of learning about what are the most important problems at WCO and the customs administrations, which I hope to learn a lot today. But some of the important problems that I have got to learn are, one can use satellite image-based detection of the laundering routes. I'm going to show you one example. And you can use machine learning to look at underpricing as well as overpricing. Because for a certain product, we can see the various range of the prices there exist. We can also compare that with what is published in the internet. When the same item is mentioned, what are the price ranges? And then we can compare them to see what might be the outlier. And when we have a distribution, humans cannot draw the line, but machines, by analyzing these statistical distributions, are much better at drawing the line of which is more likely outliers. Okay, so laundering routes. So laundering, if we have information about the port information and the sequences of the ports for each of the goods, then we can if we have enough information like that, and we have some labels of legitimate routes versus illicit routes, and then we tell the machines to determine which one is more likely illicit, then we can pretty much have maybe 80%, 90% accuracy in classification. But that doesn't mean that the machines should make the final decision. The machine's job is to look at large amount of data, which is too many for humans to handle, and just prune them into a small set. So the humans can engage in more advanced, more novel determination of these likely, potential illicit samples. So that's where AI can help. And one of my students found this picture of a trafficking of little tortoise in a bag for India, for either for some, making some products or something. So there are lots of different kinds of trafficking, illicit activities happening, which we have no idea of. Please introduce them to us. Just please post them on the web. I'm sure a lot of computer scientists would love to work on these problems. So this is a great example of an nonprofit organization, C4ADS. They are looking at the fuel smuggling routes of terrorists by looking at the combination of their intelligence sources and looking at the satellite images. And we also discovered, while preparing this talk, we also discovered there's a huge problem with the sex trafficking, a huge potential research that has been done in this area. So let's say someone is kidnapped, trafficked as a sex trafficking worker, and then there's a picture like this. And if we have enough pictures of all the hotel rooms all over the world, if we have these databases, then we can match the images, the background, or even though the image contains just a little bit of the background, we can pretty much try to determine where this location might be, and if you have the multiple routes, because we know that sex trafficking does not happen in one location. They keep moving to one location to another. So thereby combining these image sources and narrowing down, we might be able to make huge improvement in determining where the victim is located. So these are proposed, and these are ongoing research which I think have tremendous social impact and are really urgently needed. And companies are developing tools to look at your facial features so it could recognize just you. Not just that you are a female of certain age, of certain ethnicity. It will tell this is you, this is not you. It can tell these things. It could also associate your walking poses, your standing poses, your just the figure, and it's going to increase accuracy. And then in China, there's already, you can pay subway with your face. You don't have to bring your wallet or anything. You just show your face, and that's your bank account, right? Right, so this is really awesome. You can even, this picture on the right is showing a man paying for goods at an unmanned shop. In Shenzhen, there are a couple of unmanned shops, so you pay with your face. But what might be the downside of these technologies? These look super cool. I also heard my Chinese students had told me when they enter their dormitory, they just open their room with their face. So they don't need to, and it's also very safe because other people cannot try to come into their room. But if you combine this kind of data with other kinds of data, then things could happen. China bans 23 million people from buying travel tickets as part of their social credit system. Somebody who hasn't paid their traffic fees or parking fees, if it accumulates certain amounts, they're banned from getting away from the country. So at a certain point, people feel very scared, and I think there's a fine line between what is amazing and what seems very spooky and scarysome. And customs, the data that are handled here are at this very nature as well. Can we associate credit card company, their taxes and everything in determining who are making fraudulent transactions? Yes. But would that scare people? Yes. So where do we draw the line, and how do we share the data in a safe way? That's something that needs to be talked on for many years to come. Okay, so I think the remainder of the time, I'm just going to show you the title of these because these are open source tools that are really available anywhere, and so that you can just see that. I'm not going to explain them. So first, you need to share the data to begin with. First, you don't need to share the data, but you need to know what kinds of important data that you have at your own hands. And then these are tools that are freely available, many of them. Some tools are easy for visualization, but ultimately, if you want to do high-level advanced data science, deep learning, ultimately, you need to have people who are well-versed with these terms, and you need to go to Python, not just simple visualization, basically. Right, there are deep learning tools, and rather than having simply more data, high-quality data is more important. And my final slide is that AI is moving so fast, whether we like it or not, it's just coming into our lives in various forms. And only when we think about a smart way to use it and draw the right boundaries, I think it could bring huge innovations to the customs administrations. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Dr. Cha. It was really inspiring presentation, and then it provoked a lot of thoughts about this. I would like just to, since we are just exact on the time, to summarize that there was a very interesting idea and inspiring idea of the challenges that artificial intelligence, data science provoke for customs from the organizational perspective, from the behavioral perspective. For me, what will be the key message from the Secretary General is that all the customs should think about recruiting data scientists, attracting young customs officers to use data science, to use these open tools, and then and finalizing with Dr. Cha, her conclusion saying that we really need to optimize between the benefits and the real threats of the artificial intelligence. Also, we need also to be aware that even those new trends shall apply to all countries. It's not like divided between big and small. With this, their possibilities for the questions are open after the lunch and then during the informal, because both presenters, keynote speakers will be present, so feel free to ask them for anything. Before I conclude and thank them, I would like to make some organizational announcements. After this, there is a lunch provided by the Customs Administration that you are free, that you are all invited to participate. Another big announcement that the Customs Administration is gladly inviting all of you for the gala dinner tonight at 7 o'clock. At this room, there will be nice food, nice wine, and then nice folk music. So I really expect all your presentation. And then after the lunch, since the room needs to be prepared, all the presentation and the work will go on the floor -1. With this, I would like to applaud, a big applause to our keynote speakers for their presentation, and then bon appetit, and we reconvene at 2:30. Thanks.
근데 너